What if a totalitarian state didn't control you through the usual methods, not with terror or scarcity or barbed wire, but instead it offered you perfect, endless comfort?
And not just comfort, but pleasure. Unshakable stability.
Exactly. It's a terrifying paradox, isn't it? And it's the core idea of the world we're diving into today. The world state.
Right. This is a society that achieved total control, not by making its citizens miserable, but by making them, well, irrevocably happy. Chemically, psychologically happy.
And that is a truly disturbing thought. So our mission for this deep dive is to really unpack the world state's most revolutionary idea, the complete engineering of human happiness. We're going to focus on the precise techniques they use to get rid of inner conflict, to erase individuality, all in the name of social stability.
To really get this, you have to see what their revolution actually was. It's fascinating because the real change wasn't political or economic in the way we usually think about it. The controller, Mustafa Mond, he calls it a revolution achieved in the souls and flesh of human beings. The ultimate goal, and this is the scary part, was to create a population of slaves who are never coerced.
Because they love their servitude.
They love it. You don't need chains if they genuinely enjoy being in the cage.
Okay, so let's unpack how they build that cage. Let's start at the most basic level. Biology. If you want a perfectly stable society, you have to standardize the human product itself.
Precisely. The world state understands that managing a diverse population is just. It's inefficient. So their solution is revolutionary. They just abolish natural birth.
What they call viviparous.
Right, and they replace it completely with ectogenesis bottled babies. This lets the managers control everything. The exact environment, the salinity, the chemical exposures, even oxygen deprivation.
All tailored to create these 5 perfect castes, from alphas all the way down to epsilons.
And they push the standardization to these just incredible, almost industrial extremes. We're not just talking about eugenics. This is mass production.
The Bokanovsky group.
Exactly. Where one single ovum can be chemically forced to bud and produce dozens, hundreds, even thousands of genetically identical individuals.
The scale is the point.
Right.
I mean, the sources mention centers like Mombasa producing 17,000 identical individuals from a single batch.
Yes. The goal is to eliminate individuality, not just on a philosophical level, but on a physical mass manufacturing level. If you have 17,000 identical deltas, you get rid of the threat of difference, of complexity.
And you get a workforce perfectly suited for the factory floor with zero risk of ambition.
Zero. So once they've mass-produced the body, they immediately turn to programming the mind to love its predetermined role. We're moving from genetics right into conditioning.
And it starts immediately.
Absolutely. This is where neo-Pavlovian conditioning comes in, right in infancy. And this training, it has 2 purposes. Ensure loyalty to your caste, and, just as importantly, ensure perpetual consumption for the economy.
That's the insidious link, isn't it? Take the love of nature. They figured out that things like primroses and landscapes are gratuitous.
They're free.
They're free. They don't keep any factories busy. Loving nature is economically inefficient.
So the solution is chillingly efficient. Abolish the love of nature, especially for the lower castes. They condition infants to hate it. They pair flowers and books with, sudden shocks and loud, terrifying noises.
But at the same time, they condition them to love all country sports.
Because those sports entail the use of elaborate apparatus. You have to consume manufactured goods, pay for transport, all of it.
So they didn't get rid of leisure. They just... They swapped the psychological motivation for it. They weaponized consumption.
They did. And in psychology, this would be described as a perfect, massive application of both classical and operant conditioning. You pair the non-consumerist thing nature with guaranteed negative outcomes like pain and fear.
Right.
And you pair the desired social task-consuming sports equipment with constant positive reinforcement. It guarantees immediate unquestioning obedience and, perpetual consumerism.
And nobody ever spends their free time reflecting quietly in a forest.
Not a chance.
Okay, so moving from that immediate conscious training, we get to what the world state considers its greatest moralizing and socializing force of all time. Hypnopedia. Sleep teaching.
What's so clever here is that they realized the early conditioning was, a bit crude. It couldn't instill complex social behaviors. But hypnopedia, delivering these verbal lessons to sleeping children, it's the perfect tool.
Because the critical mind isn't engaged.
Exactly. It allows them to install these deep behaviors and the finer distinctions of the caste system, all without any questioning.
And the whole mechanism just relies on brute repetition. The sources have that chilling statistic that Bernard Marx thinks about. 62,400 repetitions make one truth.
So the adult mind, for these citizens, is literally just the sum of suggestions they absorbed while sleeping. They don't reason, they just recall the slogans.
Slogans that reinforce, cast pride, telling epsilons how much better they are than gammas.
And telling gammas how lucky they are not to be epsilons doing boring, filthy work. And crucially, slogans that enforce promiscuity. Everyone belongs to everyone else, repeated over and over to make sure no stable emotional pair bonds can ever form.
Because those are seen as a threat. Intense, dangerous emotion.
A huge threat to stability.
This gives you a real insight into the nature of propaganda itself. The world state figured out that propaganda works best not through some eloquent argument, but through silence, by never mentioning the uncomfortable truths.
Yes, that's it. Totalitarian control works best by lowering what they call an iron curtain between the masses and any facts the bosses find undesirable. If you never hear a contradiction, if you never even know that history existed, or that powerful, painful emotions are possible,
then the sleep-taught suggestion just becomes an unquestionable fact.
The absence of knowledge secures the peace.
So once the mind is programmed, the world state's next major innovation is eliminating all that internal emotional friction. They're actively working to remove all sources of strong, painful emotion.
Especially the time between wanting something and getting it.
Right.
Mustafa Mann, the controller, he confirms this. He asks this rhetorical question. Has any individual been compelled to live through a long time interval between the consciousness of a desire and its fulfillment?
And the answer is, of course not. That would be horrible, precisely.
The wait itself, the yearning, the struggle for gratification, that is the horror they've eliminated.
So in psychology, this is basically a form of engineered emotional avoidance, but scaled up to a global social policy.
It is. By institutionalizing promiscuity and ensuring there are endless immediate leisure activities, they prevent deep attachment, grief, or most dangerously, any profound dissatisfaction.
Which are all threats to the stability they worship.
Oh, wait, if you have total emotional avoidance, instant gratification all the time, doesn't that lead to some kind of existential boredom? Doesn't the human mind eventually rebel against having no struggle?
That is the precise trap they have to engineer their way around. If you're bored, you start thinking.
You start thinking critically. So the system counteracts this by making pleasure mandatory and intensely sensory. This is why the leisure activities are so shallow but also overwhelming. The feelies, the constant sex games, the solidarity services.
They fill every waking moment with sensation.
Exactly. There is zero mental space left for reflection or critical thought. They don't just remove the pain, they constantly apply this low-level static of pleasure to drown out any possible rogue thought.
And that's why they need the fail-safe. If all that emotional management fails, if a rogue thought slips in,
then we get to the ultimate solution. Soma, the perfect drug.
Soma is so central to their system. It's the chemical substitute for everything. For narcotics, for religion, for any internal struggle or existential question.
It's described as euphoric, narcotic, and pleasantly hallucinant. It offers all the advantages of Christianity and alcohol. None of their defects.
It's the ultimate political lubricant. It's literally designed to provide a holiday from reality whenever you like and come back without so much as a headache or mythology.
Total escapism with zero social or chemical consequences. It's not like the mezcal the savage's mother took, which brought sickness and more shame. The world state's technology makes sure the pleasure is clean, consequence-free, and socially compliant.
A gram is better than a dam.
Precisely. And this engineered pleasure isn't just chemical, it's intrinsically tied to mandatory consumption. You mentioned the feelies, these stereoscopic films with synchronized scent and tactile feedback.
Affecting the facial erogenous zones. It's totally passive enjoyment that just reinforces the reliance on complex manufactured tech.
And this is where the system becomes a perfect closed loop. The hypnopedic whispers constantly reinforce a consumerist cycle, which you need to keep the factories running. Ending is better than mending, ending is better than mending.
The economic policy is simple. Obsolescence is mandatory. Pleasure is linked to buying new things. I do love having new clothes.
But the smoothness of it all cracks when we look at the few individuals who actually feel the discomfort of conformity.
Bernard Marx, who's physically atypical and feels separate, and Helmholtz Watson, who's a perfect alpha, but feels this deep, unused capacity. He says he has Something important to say, only I don't know what it is.
They represent the failure of the system to totally erase that inherent human need for meaning, for struggle. Their internal conflict is the very thing the world state works so hard to eliminate.
And that brings us back to the controller, Mustafa Mond, who understands the full, horrifying philosophical trade-off.
He's the only one who sees the whole picture. He openly admits that stability, that guaranteed happiness, requires sacrificing truth and beauty. He even says they had to chain even science because any serious independent discovery is potentially subversive.
You can't have real scientific progress if you only allow safe, predictable knowledge.
That's the entire calculation. Mond says it explicitly. Happiness has got to be paid for. One can't have something for nothing. And the price they paid for this perfect, stable society was individuality, art, profound emotion, and the search for truth.
Which brings us to the climax, this collision between John the Savage, raised outside the system where pain and literature still exist, and the perfectly engineered world state.
Yes. When he's faced with a world that has gotten rid of everything unpleasant, he just fights back. He claims the right to everything they abolished.
He sees their solution as cowardly. He thinks the absence of struggle is the absence of virtue. He literally claims the right to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune instead of just abolishing them. He says, you just abolish the slings and arrows. It's too easy.
And he doesn't just claim the right to sadness. He demands the right to suffer every possible indignity and pain. He recites this list of extreme rights that define his freedom.
The right to be unhappy, the right to grow old and ugly and impotent, the right to have too little to eat, and, this is chilling, the right to be tortured by unspeakable pains of every kind.
That is the ultimate declaration of individual meaning. The world state tries to offer a controlled version of struggle, the VPS treatments, the violent passion surrogate. It's just a compulsory monthly adrenaline flood for your health.
But John needs genuine effort. He needs consequence. His most intense, absorbing happiness came from trying to fashion, to give form, like when he painstakingly made a bow and arrows.
Or when he chose self-flagellation as a form of purification. It was active effort, chosen struggle, versus passive engineered health maintenance.
That distinction, active effort versus the passive receipt of pleasure, that really sums up the whole psychological dynamic of the world state. They used guaranteed happiness and comfort to achieve total control. They systematically removed the emotional friction, the pain, and the yearning that actually defined genuine individuality and meaning.
The world state, it succeeded in achieving freedom from things, freedom from suffering, from conflict. But the savage, he chose freedom to suffer. He argued that nobility and heroism are only possible where things are thoroughly unstable, where you have divided allegiances and temptations to resist.
Without conflict, the human spirit is just diminished into a machine for consumption.
Which leaves us with a really provocative thought for you, the listener. The world state guaranteed perfect security, health, and happiness for everyone. If that were guaranteed for you, no sickness, no poverty, no heartbreak ever, would you trade away your right to feel profound sadness, to feel anxiety, or the messy discomfort of deep, unconditioned passion?
In your own life, right now, what parts of your current freedom would you define as simply the right to be unhappy?